Hi, welcome to the channel. My name is Richard and I'm the Bull Rider, and today I'm going to show you how to install a set of carbon fiber shift paddles into your Lamborghini Gallardo. And it's going to go from looking a little bit like this with the stock tiny little shift paddles to something a lot more substantial. And it doesn't matter if you have the set of shift paddles that I sell, a set of KLA shift paddles, or a set of woven shift paddles. They all install exactly the same. So let's hop in my Gallardo Superleggera and I'll show you exactly what you need to know. All right, so first off, let's disconnect the battery in the front trunk because we're going to be taking apart the airbag, and I do not want you to have any sort of airbag codes on your car. Next, we're going to turn the key to ignition on with the battery off, like you can see, and then this will unlock the steering wheel. And then next, we're going to turn the steering wheel 90 degrees to the left or to the right, just like that. And behind the steering wheel, there are two partitions where there are screw holes holding in the steering wheel, and they are right behind where your thumbs are. They are typically covered with a little tiny cover on the back. Mine were missing, and so what you're going to do is pry those covers off with like a trim removal tool, and then behind those are two T27 Torx. So one T27 on the back side right here, and then another T27 on the back side underneath here. So we go ahead and unscrew one of them. We turn the steering wheel 180 degrees, and then we can go ahead and unscrew the other one. And then turn your steering wheel back to being straight up and down. Next, your airbag should be loose, just like mine is. And behind there is a connector. And on top of that connector, there is a little red tab that we can pull, and the airbag comes loose, just like that. Put that to the side. So next, we're gonna work on taking the steering wheel off. And for this, you need a 12-point triple square size 12. And if you buy paddles from me, I'm gonna include this in the kit. Or if you don't have it and you're using some other paddles like KLA, I left a link in the description down below for you to use as well. So go ahead and take the key out of the ignition and then lock the steering wheel. And then use your 12-point triple square to take the steering wheel off. And mine was already loose, so yours is gonna be tightened down fully. Okay, and then before you take the steering wheel off, just mark a little line on the steering wheel and then mark a little line on the steering column with like a pencil or like a very fine Sharpie. That way when you put everything back on, you don't have a crooked steering wheel or anything like that. All right, we have that fastener off. I'm gonna put that to the side. Next, you can remove the steering wheel. Just wiggle it back and forth, left and right, and it's kind of aligned on the clock spring. So we got the steering wheel. Now we can put that to the side. All right, next we're gonna focus on these two covers covering up the shift paddles themselves. And they are secured with two T25 Torx. So we remove the one on the left, and then we remove the one on the right. Right, next we're gonna be removing the covers themselves. And so what I recommend is there is a tab holding on this cover right behind the shift paddle, right where my finger is. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna push down on that area and then gently pull it back. And these are a little bit tricky, so just be patient. Wiggle it just a little bit. There we go. So once we have this backside off, we're pretty much on easy street. So we're gonna pull it this way now, towards me. Maybe wiggle it just a little bit. I'm gonna push this housing down. Just finagle it, just be gentle. There we go. Right on. Right, so I got this loose, and with the OEM paddles, I can get it off all the way. I just have to be a little bit gentle and a little bit careful. I have to get it around the light stock and then off the paddle. Next, we're gonna work on the other side. So same thing, I'm gonna push on this part right behind the shift paddle with my fingers, indent it a little bit, and then pull it towards me. This one I thought was a little bit trickier, so bear with me. There we go. That was tricky. And then same thing with this side. I'm going to move the stock up and then gently remove it. And please be careful with this because these tabs are really gentle. So you have to be very careful with this and the soft touch material on the side. Mine has seen a little bit better days and might be due in replacement. So just something to consider while you're in here. So next we're going to be removing the trim cover on the top that covers the top of the steering column. And this is a little bit tricky. So we're going to do it step by step and make sure you have all the little tabs and pins and everything like that. So first off, right above the bolt holes, there's little tabs, and we can kind of pull this out. Mine's a little bit loose. We can pull this out on both sides, and those parts of the tabs are released, if you see that. Yours might have a little bit more stiction. I think I've taken mine apart a little bit too much. Next, we're going to be looking inside of here, and then this is right next to the shift paddle on both sides. So I apologize in advance for the lighting, but right on the other side, Same thing, we're gonna push it in and then pull it up just so gently, just to release it from the metal bracket right here. All right, so last but not least, since we got those 2 front ones undone, we have one last one undone. You might notice that there's a little bit of a gap right here. And I already undid it because I wanted to show you where it was, and I want you to apply pressure in the correct spot. And if you've never replaced this plastic before, it might be brittle and it might break on the inside. And don't be surprised if that happens, but you know, it's just kind of how it happens when it comes to interior stuff. So you can see there's 2 alignment pins right where my pinky is, right there, and then there's one right there, and then right in the middle there is the tab. So what you're going to do is you're going to get a trim removal tool and install it right in that spot right here, and then you're going to wedge it up. So once you undo that, it should come loose just like you see, and you're going to have to do that to the other side as well. So once you have those 2 on the back loose, this should pop off and you'll have a lot of access to be able to remove this whole entire piece entirely. And it's held on with a gator. So I have the Alcantara gator, but if you have just a regular Gallardo, it's going to be leather. So there's 3 little tabs holding it on, and all we're going to do is just pull it off of the gator really quickly, and that comes loose just like that. And now this whole plastic piece is free and we can push it to the side. All right, next we can focus on the shift paddles themselves, and they're held in with several screws, and the right side is overlapping the left side. So the main mechanism holding these paddles in is these 2 steel brackets. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take off the right side paddle first, and then we're gonna take off the left side paddle. First, let's focus on taking off these 2 screws in the center, holding the 2 paddles together. And this is a T9 Torx. And then on the lower side of the shift paddle mechanism, we have another T9 Torx right next to the light column. And then on the right side, on the right paddle, right next to the wiper stock, there is another T9 Torx underneath the shift paddle that we're going to take off. Right, so I'm going to take off the right paddle first, and I'm going to remove the right T9 underneath the shift paddle, like I just showed you. And then on the top side of the right paddle, I'm going to loosen these 3 T9 Torx right on the top. And one thing to keep in mind is that there is a moderate amount of spring pressure underneath this plate. So what I would do is I would hold the shift paddle in like this as I'm unscrewing it, just to make sure nothing pops out at you. Now everything is loose and decoupled. I'm going to go ahead and remove that steel plate from the shift paddle mechanism and put it aside. And then inside of this mechanism, we're going to have a PCB board that is loose. So what we're going to go ahead and do is take this PCB board out just like that, and then put it to the side. And then we're going to take this mechanism to the bench. Now we're going to remove the left side, and same with the left side, we're going to remove the fastener underneath the paddle first, and then we're going to remove the 3 fasteners on the top. And again, remember what I said, there is a moderate amount of spring pressure in here. So what I'm gonna do is put my hand on it. I'm gonna get this cover plate off, and it is aligned with dowels back here, right behind the clock spring. So if it doesn't come loose, just be a little bit patient and wiggle it up. There we go, just like that. See that? Okay, I'm gonna get this plate and put it to the side. And then same with the other side, I have this printed PCB mechanism that I'm gonna take out, and we're gonna put this on the bench and replace it with the brand new shift paddles. So I want you to stick with me, and I know this is complicated, but we just got those old shift paddles off the car and we're about to put the brand new ones on, and I really need you to know what to do. So let's hop onto the bench and I'll show you exactly what to do with these new shift paddles. We have the stock paddle in the original shifter mechanism, and we're going to disassemble this first. So this is spring loaded. So what we're gonna do is we're going to pull the paddle up vertically off of this shaft, and then there is a spring-loaded clip inside of there. You can see that little brass bushing with the roller bearing on it. So we're going to pull it up ever so gently, and I'm going to place my thumb right in front of this little spot, so that way the spring mechanism doesn't pop out all over my garage. And be sure to do that, because if you lose that, you're screwed, okay? So just really be careful with that. Okay, let's pull this plastic piece with the spring-loaded mechanism outside of this paddle, and then we can put it to the side just for now. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other shift paddle. I'm going to start lifting it up, putting my thumb right in front of it, be very gentle, and then it should come free of the housing slowly, 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 slowly. Okay, just like that. There we go. Put the housing to the side, and then I'm going to pull that little mechanism out, Okay, so we got our new paddles that we're gonna install in the car. And if you're buying paddles from me, there's gonna be a little piece of tape on the end of them, and that's gonna cover up the assembly lubricant that I put inside of each of these shafts. Pay special attention to that, and if you're buying these used, put a little bit of silicone-based lubricant in there. I'll leave a link in the description down below for you. Next, we're gonna get these spring mechanisms, and you can see there's that little tab poking out, maybe a millimeter, right on the top of that little spring mechanism on the plastic piece. And you can see on the other side it's flat. So what we're gonna do is make sure that this little tab mechanism is facing towards the bottom side of the paddle. So if we're looking at the paddle, the bottom side is where my finger is located, and the top side is where that little limit is, that little metal nub right on the top of the paddle. And so we're gonna take the plastic part with that little boss feature on the outside of it and push it in to the new shifting paddle. And then make sure it seats in all the way. And a little bit of assembly lubricant will come out. I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up with my finger. We don't need that much. I think I put a little bit too much in there. Okay, same with the other paddle. And then we can install it into the actuator mechanism, just like that. Okay, next we're going to determine which paddle is left and which one's right. So if you have the front of the paddle towards you and you look at the interface mechanism, you can see this little limit right on the top, that little bulbous thing hanging out right on the top of the interface mechanism. And if that's facing up, then this is the right paddle, and then this is the left paddle. What we're gonna do next is we're going to install the plastic shrouds onto the paddles because they obviously can't go over them any other way. So I'm gonna push it through the housing, and then I'm gonna do the same to the other side, just like that. Then we're gonna install the right paddle onto the right interface mechanism. And with regards to this interface mechanism, make sure this white piece is fully seated in the housing, and then make sure that this yellow plastic piece is seated fully in this black plastic housing. Okay, so we're gonna align the paddle with the interface mechanism. So I'm gonna align the hole on the paddle with the shaft on the interface mechanism and slide the two together. And then I'm gonna push the yellow piece forward, make sure it's out of the way, and it's gonna come to a limit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get my thumb and I'm gonna push in that spring into the paddle, and then it's gonna fully seat down as I press it. There we go, perfect, just like that. And you have to make sure that this yellow piece has a little bit of play, but it's not fully loose, and make sure that this white piece is fully seated in the housing as well. Okay, so this one's done. Same goes for the left mechanism. We're going to make sure that this yellow plastic piece is fully seated. We're going to align the hole on the paddle with the dowel on the mechanism and put the two together. And it's gonna hit a spot when it doesn't wanna go any further. And we're gonna get our thumb and push the mechanism in and then push it down. And then it's fully seated, just like that. Make sure that the yellow piece has a little bit of play, but it's not fully loose, and make sure the white piece is fully seated. Now we can go ahead and put this on the car. I'm gonna start with the left paddle first. So let's install the left paddle first, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the shroud through the left turn signal stock, and I'm just gonna let it sit there for now. Okay, and then we're gonna get the PCB and install it into that shift paddle mechanism housing. And it's gonna wanna pop out on you, but the main thing to do is to make sure that it's fully seated inside that housing at the end of the day. And then we're gonna get the cover plate and install that over the paddle. Okay, and then we're just gonna hold it with our thumb and our fingers. And what we're gonna wanna do is we're going to want to align the hole on the bottom of the shift paddle mechanism with the hole on the clock spring that we undid previously. And then at the same time, we're going to align the holes further in on the stainless steel plate and align it with the dowels behind the clock spring. So I'm gonna align it with the holes on the bottom of the clock spring, and then I'm gonna align it with the dowels. Okay, I got it aligned, and then I'm gonna go ahead and get those very tiny fasteners and install it onto those top 3 spots of the shift paddle. Got 1, got 2, and then I got 3. And then I'm gonna install that fastener right on the front side as well. Okay, so same goes for this side. I'm going to install the paddle through the wiper stock, and then I'm gonna install the PCB into the housing. Okay, it's fully seated. Next, I'm gonna get the cover plate and put it over the top. Okay, make sure it's fully seated. Now I'm just holding it with my hand. Same thing as before, I'm gonna align that bottom hole on the shift paddle mechanism with the hole in the clock spring, and then I'm gonna align this back plate with the dowels behind the clock spring. So here I go, I'm gonna align the bottom hole, and then I'm aligning the dowels. Everything sits perfect. Okay, let's get those tiny little fasteners and put the little tiny fasteners into those 3 little spots onto the shift paddle mechanism. Don't forget that little fastener in the front of the shift paddle mechanism. And then we're gonna tighten these 2 fasteners right behind the clock spring that we removed previously. Let's go ahead and install this shroud next, and be sure to install this little gaiter. And you can do that by just pressing it onto the assembly back again. Okay, so let's go ahead and align the top shroud with the bottom shroud using those little alignment pins that I showed you previously. And we can start by securing the back side of this shroud first. There we go, that side's in. And then I went ahead and made sure that this snapped in correctly and was aligned perfectly. And then we can align and push in these 2 right here underneath the shift paddle. Same goes for this side, align it and push it in. And at this point, these 2 should be aligned as well. And those holes down there should be aligned. But just wiggle it and just be gentle and careful with it and make sure everything lines up like it used to, and there's no interference or anything like that whatsoever. All right, now let's go ahead and install these 2 shrouds that we installed previously. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push this side into the housing that we just installed first, and then I'm going to install that little spring clip last. Okay, this side's in, and then I'm gonna snap it in. Just like that. And then this hole at the bottom should line up. Align this side first, make sure that hole is lined up, and then we can snap it in. Just like that. Now we can get these 2 T25 Torx and install them back onto the car. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the steering wheel back on and align it back to where the mark was on my steering wheel. And then tighten your steering wheel down to a torque of 50 Newton meters. Just like that. And you can see this witness line for the old paint that they put on there. I'm going to use a blue Sharpie to indicate the torque value. Just like that. Let's go ahead and install the airbag and plug in that connector, and then we can seat the airbag inside the steering wheel and align it up. And then these 2 fasteners behind the steering wheel get torqued down to a spec of 7 Newton meters. All right, then once that's done, we can go ahead and plug in the battery again, and we are good to go when it comes to this shift paddle install. And I couldn't be happier with the way these look, and I'm super excited to get this car on the road and to drive it, because it's just gonna be so freaking cool. Right, so I got these shift paddles on my Gallardo Superleggera, and I couldn't be happier. So if you like this video and you liked how easy the install was, finally at the end of the day with this wonderful modification, please consider giving this video a like, and until next time, thanks.